Welcome to another episode of the Meter Cute interviews here on Meter and Mayhem. Today, I'm chatting with Dr. Anna Claire Hodge, whose work has appeared in places such as Charleston Magazine, Mid-American Review, Hayden's Fairy Review, and the Best New Poets Anthology. She holds both a PhD and MFA in poetry and has received scholarships to places such as Sewanee Writers Conference, Martha's Vineyard Institute of Creative Writing, and the Vermont Studio Center. She lives in Orlando with her husband, where she teaches creative writing workshops and runs a custom poetry service where she helps people write things like wedding vows, toasts, and speeches. She also does pop-up poetry stations throughout Florida, where she writes mini poems in 2 minutes or less based on prompts provided by event guests. How fun does that sound? Makes you want to run out and go find one right now, right? But first, sit back, relax, and get ready to fall in love.
Hi, I'm Anna Claire Hodge. Thank you so much for being with me while I read a few of my poems to you. The first is called Royal Wedding Commemorative Mug, and I find it pretty pertinent as the news about Princess Kate Middleton, is everywhere right now. And this poem is about the tradition in my family that we wake up very early when there are royal weddings and watch them. Royal Wedding Commemorative Mug for my sister, Sarah. I've forgotten, of course, about metals and microwaves, the way heat moves, gold leaf sparking across the glass plate, crusted with the splattered sauce of last night's lasagna. Like thermals that push the wings of kestrels, the same airflow and angle that thrust me north to you. I grip the arms of my narrow seat in coach as the plane flings itself down the tarmac, and remember our mother's prayers each time we flew, fingers woven together as she whispered pleas to some god for our safety. I come to you with a carry-on stuffed with cardboard tiaras, plastic diamond rings, and in the dark before morning we wake, boil water for tea, and watch as Kate slips, thin as tissue, into the Rolls-Royce that shuttles her to Westminster Abbey. And as Pippa smooths her sister's gown, I confess that during takeoff I wished for the Boeing to flame into ash, for any excuse to die, not by my own hand. A boys' choir chirps their hymn as we dip shortbread into Earl Grey, the way your tiny hand slid into mother's vanity drawer, plucked one sleeping pill each night, then hoarded those little moons in your music box, insurance against a dark that at age 6 you already felt looming. Celebrities file in as the newscasters tell us of the orange blossoms that scent the cathedral, and the voices of the children rise into the nave. Optometry technician in training. Once, against all I'd been taught of privacy, I left an exam room door wide open for the stench of smoke and booze that hung intently on a man who slurred his symptoms, the apples of his graying cheeks caked in the body's thick slop. I learned that an irritation gone too long can blind you, how to gently clean an eye bleeding white. The doctor whispered, "This is why I hate taking Medicaid," then strode in. Men and women arrive all day, worried about infection, blindness, relieved as I mimic how to scrub the lash line gently, use a compress to relieve an angry pink lid. Just days here, I found that patients often lie about their vision, squint at the letters projected in the dark, hope to call out correctly the lines that spell nothing at all, so scared to fail. They leave with lenses too weak against the blurring of traffic lights, television, their children's faces. I greet another patient, Lead him to yet another dim room. Ask if his sight satisfies him. Wrap a cuff around his arm and slide into my ears the stethoscope's cold hook. Write a blood pressure on his chart that is entirely false, having not yet learned to hear correctly the heart's small bleeding. Sephora during the cancer scare. Smile widely at the black smocked salesgirls. Like chemists, they explain acid, hydration, suggest a balm to firm your thighs, but can't tell you whether you're dying. Girls these days draw freckles on their cheeks, across the bridge of a nose, rather than hide them. This is the world now. Expose, uncover your body to the sun, to a man, to a camera, to the doctors who for weeks have asked you to describe the pain, how your belly swells and stabs, offered styrofoam cups of neon juice to trace pathways through the meat of you. Now, somewhere on a computer screen, you are flayed and regarded, the spot on your liver learning its own name. You've always been impatient, the girl who wants and wants. Have you broken yourself with the having of it all? For now, open clamshells of eyeshadow, trace lipsticks over the root ball of veins in your hand until you are smudged berry and coral. Choose orange, bright, louder than ever. Instructions for the good girl. No one will need the book. There's the internet now. Still, give the joy of cooking to each new bride you know. Understand that women don't do things correctly anymore. Women that have long hair after 40, who think it's fine to throw a baby shower for their own daughter, don't send thank you notes or freeze violets into an ice mold to float in a punch bowl. Who date Black men and eat in front of the television, who drink too much, host sex toy parties and lick flavored nipple creams from their wrists, who wear sticky red lipstick. What do they expect if they don't lose the baby weight or have dinner waiting for their husbands? What did you expect, kissing men in Italian nightclubs on study abroad? She'd already told you a red-blooded man would only do what you let him. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. Anna Claire, that was lovely.
Thank you.
Um, I was I was taken by how often um you have metrical lines that will just like sneak into your poems. There was one, I come to you with a carry-on. And like I wrote it down and scanned it because I was like, wait, that's what is it? And it's iambic tetrameter if you were wanting to.
I had no idea.
And it's just lovely. Like you have these moments where it just like pops and it really makes it pop out in a free verse poem just in this amazing way. Um and I also I was not I was not prepared for the twist in that royal wedding poem.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I'm not prepared for it. Like, I hadn't read that poem in a while, not out loud or otherwise. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a mental health suicide poem. Oops. I forget all the time. So I'm just as surprised as you are.
um it brought tears to like I was here um I was over here like okay I gotta get together before I turn my camera back on right. um
Yeah.
and I think as somebody who remembers I got up. I haven't done it for all the royal weddings, but I got up for the Sarah Ferguson and Andrew wedding of
Oh,
all the
wow.
ones. But because I was like just at that age where I had enough agency that I could like know to get up, but I didn't have,
Mhm.
all these other things going on. So I remember, sitting on the living room floor all sort of wrapped up, half asleep in the
Yeah,
so
That's exactly what it's like. And thank you, because sometimes I feel a little embarrassed because I worry it makes me and my sisters and my mom sound like we're obsessed with the royals, and it's more just like fascination. And, it feels like almost like a sleepover when you get to stay up late and it's like this, ooh, we're breaking rules, watching a princess get married.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's to have things that to have events that bond you, that you know you're going to have this connection over.
Very much so.
Um which uh I try to think how to say this that doesn't make me sound whatever. Um because so my husband and I have really gotten into Eurovision.
Mm.
And I tell you, it brought a new level of closeness. I mean, because we've been married, it'll be 25 years in June.
Oh,
And like it like brought this new level of closeness where we had this thing that like we get together and we watch all the national finals and we talk about what we think about everything. And it's just this new thing to connect on. And so I really I can see where that works with the weddings as well.
I very much get that. I always Of course, there's prestige TV, Game of Thrones, Sopranos, like all of that. And my husband and I recently got into The Good Wife. I don't know if you watch that. It's like a procedural with, of course, like will they, won't they love stories behind it. But I love it. He'll even ask me, "Do you want to do a G wife tonight?" And now we're even on the spin-off, and I'm like, it almost feels like Friends sometimes, like you're tapping in and no, I love that bonding over things like
Excellent. Well, thinking about bonding and things that are have been meaningful, what book has created the most mayhem in your life?
Oh, mayhem. So it's The Giver by Lois Lowry. So it's a YA book, and I don't consider myself very well versed in YA, at least contemporary YA. Of course, I did like um, Hunger Games and all of that, but I'm very out of the loop. But there's kind of theme in my life of reading particular books way too early. Like I think I read The Bell Jar at like 13.
But maybe the perfect age to read it though, too. Like,
Probably. I recently reread it and was like, oh my goodness. Okay, no wonder I turned out the way I did. But sorry, back to The Giver. I think I read that when I was like 11 or 12. And of course, the premise is a utopia in which everyone is confined to the idea of sameness. No one is allowed to break out, really have their own thoughts. You are assigned a job. There are birth mothers who carry babies. And I bel and that's right around the time, 11 or 12, when one might start seeing the adults, the authority figures in your life, and start thinking like, are you full of shit? Or can I trust that you know what you're talking about? And I started tapping into that, being like, man, the adults in this, so-called utopia seem to be really doing a disservice to the young people. And I don't think I had read anything dystopian at that time, but I just found it so moving that the protagonist is trying to find his way. And it's almost like this veil has lifted for him, in which he starts to literally see the world in color and then become the receiver of all the memories of the past. So, real things that families did, war, famine, all of these intense things. And I guess one of the main themes is unless you're remembering all of the things that have come before, especially the horrific, the cruel, you are going to often make those same mistakes again, even if you're attempting to create a utopia in which groupthink abounds. And I think right now it's incredibly pertinent to kind of examine groupthink in all uh, belief systems and determine like, am I just um, following here, or am I being thoughtful and examining um, these things that I have been told are this is the way we do things. This is going to be the best kind of world.
So I'm going to ask you a tough question about that book.
Sure.
How do you read the ending? Which way of viewing that ending do you
Man,
ascribe to?
yeah. So the ending, for those that don't remember, is that, oh my God, this is awful, but I've forgotten his first name, the protagonist's first name, and I'll just feel ashamed about that later.
That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but he escapes this dystopia with an infant and, is hiding from heat-seeking planes, all of this. It was not okay to leave and finds himself coming across a cabin in which there's a family celebrating Christmas. There's snow, which he didn't even know existed until he became the receiver of the memories. And we don't know, does he go to the cabin? Does he die from hypothermia? Um, I would like to think, I would like to be optimistic about that ending. Maybe because I'm a hopeless romantic, or all that pain and anguish that he deals with in the book. I would like to think that he gets a respite from that. But I don't know. There was, Lois Lowry was, I think, on a panel discussion. And what did she say? She was like, by the way, he lives, just in case you were wondering. So if she says it, I'm going to believe it. But I didn't read that until recently. I was like, okay.
Okay, I had not so when I read it actually rather I came to a lot of books rather late. So I was in my like mid-20s when I read it for the first time. And um I just took it at face value. I was like, this is great. There's the cabin, there's the lights.
Hmm.
Ta-da! Yay! And it wasn't until like years later, I was on the internet and I saw this people talking about the ending,
Hmm.
and they were putting it out as like he clearly died, the cabin was an illusion the whole time. And I was
Okay.
like, I was like angry, that internet anger you can get, like,
Oh, yeah.
what are you talking about? So I'm so glad to hear that Lois Lowry actually says he lives, because there's also, if you look at the sort of companion world novels and stuff, there
Mhm.
are other, like, what is it, Gathering Blue, I think, or something like that is the title of one of the other ones. Like, there are other communities out there, so it's totally possible.
Absolutely. And then to take it a step further, because of course I'm going to, what if those people suck? Like, what if he goes to the cabin and, there's like a narcissistic father who's violent? Or, what if the siblings or whoever is like, you know, it's so funny to think like, oh, this familial, this beautiful Christmas scene, twinkle lights, but like, what if it sucks?
Right. Oh, yeah, right. Oh, I think we're gonna leave him just happy on the little sled coming down the hill, looking at the cabin and going, this is beautiful.
I
But
agree. I
but I
agree.
think that's, yeah, and I think that's one of the power uh in some of your poems
Oh, thank you.
comes from the, like you hold in those poems both the what if it sucks and the joy of seeing the beckoning warm windows. Like, you got both of them in there, like even in that, like, thinking specifically again about that, the royal wedding poem, you've got both. You've got the connection, and then you've got the something underlying is not great here too. So, oh, I love it.
I mean, yeah, man, I hesitate to even say duality because I think it's more complicated than that. Um, I always try to see nuance if I can. That's difficult, right? Especially for someone who is perpetually online, way more than I should be. And the internet is not really a breeding ground for nuance, right? It's the loudest people screaming the loudest, and I'm right, you're wrong. And in some cases, sure, absolutely, if we're talking about like hardcore extremes. But I don't know. I try because I write a lot about my family. My whole manuscript that I'm trying to get published is about ideas of legacy. Um, and I think I try really hard that my poems are not an indictment against anyone because that feels lazy. And if we're looking at, older family members or people in the past who are gone, I think it's important to feel compassion, but also be realistic. So thank you, because that's what I attempt in my poems is that like I don't want to be the hero and I don't want to be the victim.
I like I I like it. I feel that. I think that's something that I have been trying a lot with my work too. So it's good to find a kindred spirit on that.
Thank you.
Um, so what advice would you give to a younger version of yourself? Either, just starting about your writing or when you're reading Give the Giver or like just some earlier Anna Claire.
To my younger self. Yeah, so there's going to be a theme here, and I'd like to, the caveat is that like I haven't just been sitting here stewing about these things, but when I knew that you were going to ask this, I started making a note in my phone, and I realized that so many pieces of advice were thematically linked, almost like a book manuscript. And the main thing that I came up with that I wish younger me knew is that people who are cruel and manipulative and try to make you feel bad about yourself as a way to control you don't deserve access to you. And if you need to physically be around them, which is, as a young person, a lot of times that's what's going to happen, um, then they don't deserve access to your inner emotional world. And I have a real problem about not shutting the F up when it comes to wanting to share my inner world with people. And that's something I'm still working on, where I'm like, wait, why did I just spill my guts to that person I just met? Let's rein that in a little bit. But yeah, people who are cruel, they don't deserve that access. And you've got to protect yourself because what's that line? And I hesitate to say it because it kind of sounds like a meme or like an inspirational meme, but you teach people how to treat you.
Yeah.
And the longer that you're a doormat, that you live to serve the whims of others rather than risk displeasing people, it's going to be much harder as you age to set those boundaries, to stand up for yourself. And people are going to push back even harder when all of a sudden you're like, you know what? No more. I'm a full person. I deserve to have opinions. I deserve to make my own choices. And as long as I'm not harming you or myself, like in real ways, I got to live for myself. And not in a selfish way, in a we're on a floating rock in space that's going to be consumed by a supernova one day. So I don't know that using the right stationery is important unless you care about that. So it's that idea again of legacy of tradition. And I saw this other thing online that like blew my mind. And it said, tradition is peer pressure from dead people.
Right.
And I was like, oh my goodness, because it's so plainly said. But, and listen, there's something to be said for traditions that one, make you feel good, that are real bonding moments, that are beautiful and joyful. But adhering to traditions that are, and forgive my language, bullshit, that are passed down like trauma. No, this is the way we do things. And therefore, that's the way you're going to do things. And as young people, well, I don't know how young we are, but like millennials are beginning to push back on that and say, like, why are we doing this? This is harmful. This is putting people in boxes and expecting them to behave in ways that please people that one might not even be alive anymore or exist to perpetuate the stereotypes, roles, um, just perpetuating badness that maybe even the people who are attempting to perpetuate it don't even want to participate in at all. So I've been thinking a lot about that. And that poem that I read, the last one, Instructions for the Good Girl, was one of the first poems I wrote that was trying to get to the bottom of like, wait, why is this so important? I don't know.
I I feel that. I feel all that. I was it was like kind of all I could do to not be going like yes and like talking over it. But I and my counselor works on boundary, like talking to me about setting boundaries with people.
Nice.
And and I was like, well, I set a boundary, but then they crossed it. They're like, yes, and then you did what they wanted you to do. So you just taught them that they don't have to respect the boundary. And I'm like, ah, darn it. Yes,
I
you're right.
know. Yeah, it's like it's like this Pavlovian, you're training each other. And I don't know if you grew up with this mentality, but I call it like nice young lady syndrome, where I was so obsessed with the idea of appearing like a nice young lady. And I was just a doormat and a social chameleon in ways that really didn't serve me because like that just led in my like late 20s and 30s to I just became a walking identity crisis. I tried to be an influencer for a while. You knew me when I was in academia, where, if I'm being honest, I felt very out of place. And, I made incredible friends, but I was like, I don't think that I am for this. And that has happened to me a lot. Like, wait, I don't think I'm for this. And to kind of tap into, wait, what is middle school me like? Like what is child me like? What do I like? And I remember, like, I'm not religious at all. I don't adhere to any sort of belief system like that. And I was talking to someone who I knew was very religious and deeply connected to their Christian faith. And I just started pulling out, one-liners. Oh, yes, this, and this, and being Christ-like and blah, blah, blah. And then I walked away and I was like, they don't know me at all. That person has no idea who I am. And there's something to be said for tact. Like, honesty without tact is cruelty, right?
Oh, yeah.
I also stole that from someone. I did not make that up. But I realized like even I met someone a while back who was really into comic books. Or graphic novels. Uh, I've read a few of those. Here's what I've read. And I'm like, oh, I am just placing myself in a place for them to approve of me, even if I don't care a lot about that thing. And like, if you could be a fly on the wall for me at like a baby shower or a bridal shower, like I am going to be a nice young lady. I mean, I'm coming up in my 40s, but no, I'm going to be a nice young lady. And all of those people are going to walk away and, oh, what a nice young lady. And kindness and graciousness, and that's all important. That's nice. But damn, that wasn't authentic at all. So clearly I'm grappling with a lot of this is like, what is so bad about someone disapproving of me? What's so bad? It's not going to kill me. It's already happening. So what's so bad about like integrity? I don't know.
Oh, man, if you find an answer to that question, I mean, and probably it'll be in a poem. So when you get that poem published, where you get to the bottom of like what's so wrong with somebody disapproving of you, let me know because I that is also that is there's fight, flight, or freeze, and now they've realized there's fawn.
Oh, that's
And
me.
I am fawn. Yeah, me too.
That was on my list of advice was fawning is only going to make it worse. Like you can't fix it. You're never going to fix it if someone has decided to actively misunderstand you. If they're like, no, you're this way, well, what are you going to do? And like, I think about friendships. I ended what, 3 friendships in the past few years, and that is not me. Like, oh, I don't want to hang out with you anymore. I'm going to fly across the country and visit you, even if I don't want to reduce conflict,
Right.
to not deal with it. And I ended, I think, 3 friendships in the past few years. Oh, the lightness, like this weight off my shoulder. And you know what? I can be the villain in their story. I don't like to think about it, but like, okay, I'm the villain, but I'm happier.
Yep. And like you said earlier, we are on a rock floating in space that won't be here, like we got a finite amount. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a thought I find both terrifying and comforting, depending on what time of day and where my hormones are that day. But
Right.
it's a good reminder that, like, oh, maybe that wallpaper isn't that important.
Yeah. I I feel like some people go the kind of so far to the opposite way though, that things aren't important, and so then it's so hard to make a decision with them. Um it's like, yeah, I know that the world's going to, explode in however many hundreds of,
Sure.
whatever, but like we still have to decide what we're gonna have for dinner, so can you help me make the decision?
Oh, absolutely. Like, borders on nihilism, right? And I see so often this, I hesitate to speak about this because I don't want to open myself up to being publicly shamed. But wait, I was just talking about that. I can be publicly shamed, right? Um, but often see people maybe our age, Gen Z, with this caveat before saying something else, like, well, the world is on fire, well, the world is shit, but, you know? And yeah, it's on fire. But a comedian I really like, Josh Gondelman, said in one of his acts a while back, I think the world is getting better. And I was like, what? And that thought was just really illuminating to me because it was speaking of things bending toward justice and the idea, I don't know, it's a little messy, but the idea that, you know, yes, sure, the world is on fire. There are so many things that are terrible and horrific. Absolutely. But there's so much joy as well, these glimmers of things. And I spoke about wallpaper. I'll tell you what, I love the wallpaper in my powder bath. It brings me joy every time I go in there. And I can't discount those things because I would never get out of bed. I would never get out of bed if I thought that there was nothing to save. And I think one can be optimistic without being a Pollyanna. And that's what I hope to foster in myself. And I hope that doesn't come off as glib. I recognize the horrors, as a whole. But I also want to recognize, especially as my husband and I are considering having a child, like, all right, if we're going to do this, we can't just like be mad on the internet all day. We got to figure out a way to interact with the world as it is. And whether it's donating, activism, just conversations in one's living room, those are the things that are going to improve the world.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. I like that thought. Um, what advice do you think the younger Anna Claire would have for you now if she could get into a time machine and see this world with all of its good and bad? What advice do you think that she would give to you? I mean, it could also be bad advice. Maybe she'd give you bad advice, but like, what advice do you think she'd give?
Yeah, it's hard to trust the advice of younger me. No, I don't know. There's a lot about her that I love a lot. Um, let's see. I wrote a whole list and I'm trying to think about One would be choose your convictions. Our brains and hearts, at least to me, I do not have the capacity to be angry about the entire list of things that are angering. And that's not to say that I ignore them or don't care. I do very much. But there are issues that are at the top of my list of things that I want to dedicate my life and energy and heart to. They're not going to be the same things on other people's lists. But I would rather give my energy, my donations, my anger, my fear, my optimism to a few things that I am just very convicted by. And again, I don't mean that to sound glib or that every cause doesn't matter, because I think they do. But I don't know, choose your convictions. And also I would tell me that it's okay to be thoughtful and take a beat or as many beats as you need to form an opinion, to determine what I think about something rather than falling prey to groupthink and not having enough information. And it's okay to change your mind. In academia, I was exposed to so many different kinds of people, which broke my world open. I grew up in Ocala, Florida. It's small. It's more of a city now, but it wasn't progressive, and made amazing friends and all of those things, great experiences. But when I went to college, well, not as much college. I went to a super homogenous College of Charleston in the South. It doesn't matter. But grad school, the PhD, I was like, whoa, there is so much I never learned. And I just was like, I'm not describing it well, but I guess what I mean to say is trust your brain to figure it out and take some time. And it's okay to disagree. And it's okay to say, actually, I don't know enough to speak on that right now. I'm not a public figure. I don't need to make declarations about what I think about foreign policy that I don't know enough about. And that is not a reference to anything going on right now. That's just a general thing that it's okay not to know. And it's okay to collect more information and then change your mind based on that information. That would be, oh, also one more thing, just the other piece of advice was like, it would be start dealing with your shame. And if you don't, and if you become consumed by shame and embarrassment, as if you're still 15, as if you're still 21, every stupid thing you've done, if that's just like on a reel in your head as you go to sleep, like you got to deal with that, or it will eat you alive. That's a big one. And shout out to my therapist, Lowry, for helping me with that.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. And there are some things that will happen now that I'll feel myself sort of getting into. It's like, you don't want to be 20 years down the road still struggling on this little event right here that nobody else involved with it remembers. I think for me, that's one of the, I don't want to say hardest, but it is a thing about thinking back to certain times in my life where, maybe I did things that I'm not as proud of or interacted with people in ways that didn't feel authentic,
Yeah.
and sort of beating myself up about them. But then I'm also like, that of all the people in that room, the only person who remembers that event is me, right?
Why is that so hard to learn? Like recently, I've been wanting to go back and apologize for things I said off the cuff that were not meant to be cruel or thoughtless. Like, I went to one of my best friends, Candace, and was like, hey, I was just thinking about when you were pregnant and then a new mom, and I accidentally talked about my dog as if it could compare to like being a mom. And she's like, it's okay. That was like 10 years ago.
Right.
It's okay. I'm not thinking about that. But this obsession, again, it's the approval thing. God forbid I hurt someone's feelings. I don't want to. I'm not going to try to. But like, that's part of being alive is like messing up.
Yeah, letting yourself, I think depending on how, different people are raised different ways, and I think there are some people who are raised to believe that the consequences for messing up are astronomical. And sometimes some mess ups are astronomical, but most of them aren't.
Mhm.
And that's a hard thing to sort of get your brain to remember that, like, okay, this is a mistake. Human beings make mistakes, so okay.
Oh, absolutely. And especially like if they're not permanent, you're gonna, and there are even ways to get around that because I'll tell you what, Jen, I have some really stupid tattoos and they're not small. They're big. I had the good sense to keep them under my clothes. Even in a bathing suit, you can't see them. So proud of younger me for that. But here's the thing. I'm gonna get them removed, or at least one that's like really stupid. But like, I'll get them removed, or I won't. Who cares? Like, I was, 23 and needed a lot of attention. And
Oh, do you do you feel comfortable sharing what any of them are? I really I really want to know, but if you don't,
oh
that's also fine.
man. Well, the two, there are two I'm gonna leave out because they are so ridiculous. And I know my mom is gonna watch this. And I'm pretty sure she knows, but I can't for everyone's peace of mind. I have both of like my ribs done, like big tattoos on my ribs. One is oranges and orange blossoms. Um, and I could say it's like a tribute to my grandfather who was a farmer, but I mean, that's not entirely true at all. I just like Florida despite all of its insane flaws. And I think it was just like, Florida girl, it's fine. It's whatever. And then on my other side, I have a hand holding a peony in a love letter, which was just like a design that an artist came up with. But at some point, like, I don't even see them anymore. Like, I don't, like, I could be fresh out of the shower and be like, oh, right, that's there. But I don't know, like, they're not face tattoos,
Right.
And again, like, but I find myself like um, getting a massage or going to the dermatologist or any situation where someone is going to see my trunk without clothes. And I just apologize, like, oh, you're going to see stupid tattoos. And I'm so embarrassed. And I was so young. Like, why does that matter? God forbid they cringe and think they're stupid, but it's that nice young lady syndrome.
Yep. And I mean, those sound, you know, they're they're not the wildest tattoos or the most inadvisable. I mean, like there's somebody that has, I think it's a Nietzsche quote on their arm, and it's the whoever did the tattoo like misunderstood and sort of thought that they were correcting a grammar mistake in the quote, and they weren't. They were like, the quote was how the quote was.
Is this
And
someone from FSU?
yeah.
I know exactly who it is.
Yeah, and
Uh,
when they showed me that, I was just like, "Oh," right? Because then what do you do? Like, okay, well, this is not right, but there's no way to really fix it very
Yeah,
well.
and if it's who I'm thinking of, he and I were just texting the other day, and he laughs about it, which I love. He's just like, "Well, I didn't catch it," which I think is like so endearing. But yeah, the other two of my tattoos that I'm thinking about are just like big eye roll. So I won't talk about that.
Okay.
Just
So we'll
just
know
know
that
they're
there's others
ridiculous.
lurking. Well, thank you so much for coming and chatting with me today, Anna Claire. This has been a real pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. I needed it, and I hope it didn't delve too much into therapy stuff, but it's all stuff I'm grappling with and examining, and the curse of being human.
Wow, what a fun interview that was. I hope that you all had as much fun listening as I did talking. But speaking of talking, my voice is starting to go. I've been a bit bit sick this past week. And by the time y'all see this, though, I should be hale and hearty. So, but I'm going to keep this short, too late, right? To preserve my voice a little bit. One thing that Anna Claire and I forgot to talk about that I had intentionally meant to bring up is is this cool service that she offers, because she will write custom poems for people. So if you've got a special occasion coming up, if you've got I don't know, maybe even just like a reunion of all your college buddies and you want all of your inside jokes worked into a poem, but that also still looks like a poem, she can write that for you. Uh, her website is annaclairehodge.com, so you can check her out. And basically, what she does is she sends you a questionnaire about the kind of poem that you want and asks a bunch of different questions. You fill it out, and she crafts something. And then you take a look at it, and you can be like, or there's a little bit of a revision process to make it what you need. Perfect for if you're writing your own vows for your wedding and you need a little bit of help. You want them personalized, but you also know that maybe your ideas are better than your what's that called, execution. That you got the ideas, but it never comes out on the page right. Anna Claire can help you get it out on the page right. So how cool is that? And I had meant to ask her about it because I'm just still, I love the idea. It's so fun, right? Such a fun idea. She also is available, like if you want to do pop-up poetry at an event you're having. So like maybe you have a craft brewery or something in the Central Florida area, and you can have Anna Claire come out and write poems for all of your patrons. How fun is that? Uh, so cool. I love how people can bring poetry into everyday situations. Ah, you know, about every couple years you get an article that'll be posted somewhere about how poetry's dead and nobody reads poetry anymore. And it's just bullshit. That is always just bullshit. There are people out there all over the world reading poetry and loving poetry. They just may not be in academia, or they may not be online, or right, like there's so many different kinds of poetry for people to be in love with. There's so much. So Anna Claire can help you get to the heart of what you're trying to say with yours. It sounds so fun. Okay. Thanks for stopping by.